Let's go!
There has been some pretty crazy shifts in, I'd say, the executive tenure at Warner Brothers over the past few days. And will this have a substantial effect on the future of like NetherRealm Studios, Mortal Kombat, Injustice? Absolutely. I think this is about to have a substantial effect on what the future holds for WB Games and especially the fighting game developers therein. Let's just do a quick recap on what the hell's going on because this is sort of like coming in hot over the past couple of days. I'm gonna break down just based on my personal knowledge and history of how these companies have operated, and as somebody that has been deeply connected to their history of the past 10 plus years, what this means. So W Discovery is going through some rough times lately. Warner Brothers also restructuring its gaming division, which will impact the future of MK and DC titles. They said in the past W Games is going to try and center itself around 4 major IPs. They said Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, DC, and Mortal Kombat, according to Variety. Now, this is a bit different. You might remember that before, this wasn't DC / Mortal Kombat. I think they specifically said like Batman Arkham games or something like that, focusing on Batman games. And it was like, that's weird. Why just Batman games? Casting a much bigger net now. New restructuring. They've announced a new leader to take charge of Mortal Kombat and DC games moving forward, who is Sean Hemmerich. Been promoted to the studio head at NetherRealm Studios to Senior Vice President of Development. Emmerich is certainly no stranger to the world of MK, considering he's been credited in titles dating all the way back to Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. Sean Emmerich has been the studio head of NetherRealm Studios for God knows how long. Been up there with Ed. He's more of like the business guy. Ed is like one of the lead creative dudes, but Sean has been like a lead NRS guy for a really long time. I think this goes all the way back to even Mortal Kombat X and games that came before it. Sean has been around there for a very long time, and now he is being moved to Senior Vice President of Development at potentially like WB. Like he's been moved into a higher position than even what was at NetherRealm, sort of like managing and handling the IP of Mortal Kombat and DC. That is not bad news that you finally get somebody that has been around all the tumultuous crap that has happened over the past like several years. Wasn't he credited MK11 as vice president? Yeah, he was literally like the VP, like one of the studio heads of NetherRealm Studios, now being promoted to what I think is an official WB position beyond just the studio one. But let's read forward. The future of the series remains in a question mark. However, with MK1 Definitive Edition ending, yada yada yada, sold over 5 billion copies, yada yada yada, MK and DC will now be under the same sort of umbrella, which could make Injustice 3 being NRS's next title all the more likely. This all comes after WB is reporting gaming division has dropped 48% in the first quarter of this year, and WB Games chief David Haddad stepping down from the company. WB also shuttered 3 of its development studios, including Multiverses and Player First Games, just purchasing them less than a year prior. MVS also saw its services close down. There's a new era for WB Games on the horizon. What that means for MK remains to be seen, but clearly they aren't shelving the series since it's going to be one of their main pillars. This also doesn't mention that David Zaslav, like the recent big head of WB, recently got like his paycheck cut to a quarter, making like 22 million a year. Now he's making like 5 to 6. His shares dramatically decreased. Big pay cuts for executives across the board, which is also good things. These are not bad things. These are good things. That being said, there's a lot of questions now because the previous like studio execs that were running NRS, let me see if I can find more information on this. Montreal studio, Yves will serve as the senior VP of WB Games Montreal. Will now serve as the senior VP, right? With oversight for Harry Potter, Game of Thrones franchises, while NetherRealm is being head by Sean, who's an now pretty much ex-NRS guy, is now going to become a senior VP as well with oversight to DC and Mortal Kombat. So they're splitting. WB Games New York studio head Stephen Ellery has been promoted to senior VP of Central Tech and Services, overseeing game and publishing technology. What they did is they sort of like took different heads that were doing things before, actually closer to game development, and put them in charge of like making decisions, is what it seems like. And that's good news, because now you have people that have been embedded in game development, seemingly checking out and keeping an eye on what's happening with Harry Potter and Game of Thrones, and another one keeping an eye on what's happening with DC and Mortal Kombat. All these will report to JB Perret, CEO of Global Streaming and Games for WB Discovery. This is really good. I'm just gonna say it right now. For the sake of what we're the most interested in, which is probably DC and Mortal Kombat games, this is extremely good news because now you're gonna have people that actually understand game development a little bit in charge and helping out with decisions and getting approvals and getting, you know, licensing and all that kind of stuff. So the bigger question is, if a new WB guy that's an ex-NRS guy is now looking after DC and Mortal Kombat, does that mean that we're getting Injustice 3? Again, I don't want Injustice 3 to be Injustice 2 again. I don't want that. If they made a whole new Injustice with the new mechanics and the way characters play, sure, I'm down for it. But I don't think that's happening. Reason being, if this giant corporate restructuring is happening right now, where right now studio heads are being given the control of DC video games and Mortal Kombat video games, much more control than they've had before. If that's happening right now, when do you think that game is coming out, man? Like, if right now the overall approval process to continue and make a DC fighting game, an Injustice, that ain't happening until the next generation of consoles, dude. At the absolute earliest is 2028. I think that NetherRealm has probably been working on their next fighting game for the past like year and a half. It's probably been going on for quite some time. I would not be surprised that maybe, just maybe, at some point this year or next year we get a tease for the next NRS game, and there's a good likelihood it could be like an early 2027, you know, maybe, just maybe. But still, it definitely seems like if they were on the road and making a game currently, they likely were going to be making another Mortal Kombat. I don't want that to be the case because that would have been an overall budget and approval, and you wouldn't want to just drop that immediately and just like asset flip it to this other thing. Like, that doesn't seem smart. It's a thing that could have potentially also happened to MK1 during its development, which stifled its development too and came out with a ton of problems. Ultimately speaking, I think the highest likelihood of what NetherRealm is doing is still not going to happen anytime soon. You're not getting an announcement this year. You might get an announcement next year, and I think it most likely is going to be for a Mortal Kombat. Probably going to get the Mortal Kombat that everybody wanted with Mortal Kombat 1. That's going to be like their goal. I would love to see their take on an Injustice. I would love it, but I do not want it being Injustice 2.5, Injustice 3. I don't want that, dude. I don't want it. I don't want Superman doing the same exact forward 2-3 combo that I've been seeing since 2013, man. I don't want that. But what I actually want, just to say it again, now that we have people associated with NetherRealm Studios oversight on the DC and Mortal Kombat franchise, my dude, I don't think this is happening next either. I think this is like a 5 to 10 year plan. I think you'll actually have to get a new Mortal Kombat and a new DC fighting game before this eventually becomes a reality. But no joke, any of the push that would have happened under the previous administration that was running WB definitely would have made this very difficult in the past. And now I don't think this is actually going to be that difficult to make this game a reality again. I don't think this is actually outside the realm of possibility to do it right. That fixes what effectively is Mortal Kombat 8, and you can do it right, dude, because I think this is extremely marketable. Mortal Kombat versus DC, I think, is ridiculously marketable, and we have continually seen a ton of DC characters and Mortal Kombat characters cross over into DC and Mortal Kombat over the past 10 plus years of them making these games, man. I would just love to see a full-ass commitment, not a tag team game. Trust me, you guys are never getting a tag team game again from NetherRealm. I don't think this is happening now. I don't think it's happening in the near future. I think we'll likely have to get iterations of new MK where MK is done right, and we're going to have to get iterations of Injustice where Injustice is done right. And then they can eventually build up and combine those two together in a way that feels meaningful and impactful, and that it's been leading up to this, you know? This sort of leads me with like a sigh of relief for the folks at NetherRealm that have obviously been running into a lot of issues with WB over the past many years. And it's my hope that now that they have effectively people that were born in that studio working as the VP that manages those entire properties, leads me to think that they'll just allow things to work in the way that they should and not have to be complete bitches about everything, man.